In the world we live in today, we must always be on our toes and be able to react in a given moment. Today, we count down 5 scary experiences from 5 Reddit users. Viewer discretion is advised. We have the road trip. When I was younger, each summer and almost every new year, my family would pack the car and go on a road trip to visit family in Mexico. We never had any problems until one particular trip when I was 8. Like every road trip before, we left our home in North Texas around 6 p.m. in order to reach our destination the next morning. So around 2 a.m., we crossed to Mexico, and that's when things got weird. When you're on the only stretch of freeway in the middle of the desert, you don't tend to freak out about having the same car parked behind you for miles. It was practically pitch black outside our car windows, the only visible shades being the dotted stars and the eerie silhouettes of the caddy. We'd been in Mexico for about an hour and still had a few more to drive. And I remember sleeping but still being semi-conscious of what was around me because I didn't have the skill to really fall asleep in a car. So my mother suddenly spoke my dad's name. I heard her. Miguel, that car behind us. It's been behind us since we left Laredo. My dad looked at the car and shrugged off my mother's tension. A lot of cars use this road. He's probably going to Reynosa or another city. And he left it at that. Despite his sureness, my mom kept a wary eye on the car behind us. By this time, my siblings and I were hyper aware of the car and entertaining ourselves with watching the car through the gaps of the luggage that blocked our rear window. We got tired pretty quick. He's getting closer, my mother noted, and we turned to watch as the car inched closer and closer to ours. He's too close, Miguel! And she was right. By this time, the car was practically pressed against the rear of our car, and on a lonely stretch of highway in the middle of nowhere with another few hours until daylight, it was downright scary. We couldn't do much. My dad didn't slow down, didn't stop, and didn't speed away either. He just drove, and the car followed. The next 30 minutes were the most tense we had ever experienced. The car would ease off sometimes, only to press its blinding headlights against our rear once more. Like he knew he was freaking us out and enjoying it. It was during one of the periods that the car had pulled away and my mom spotted a police car up ahead on the side of the road and she didn't miss a beat. Pull over right in front of the police. Pull over right now, Miguel. And he did. And the car kept driving. I wonder how confused the policeman must have been as he watched my dad park the car right in front of him. The policeman came over and asked what was wrong, and my mother urgently told him everything. The car, the way it followed us and taunted us. The policeman took her claim seriously and told us of how people were victimized and had their cars stolen on these empty highways by thugs and criminals. And then he offered to drive behind us for a while to make us feel safe. We drove off with the police cruiser behind us, relieved, until about 10 minutes later when we saw something that confirmed the policeman's words and my mother's worst fear. 10 minutes later, we saw the car pulled over on the side of the road, waiting. And number 4, we have School Lockdown. This story was written by a British guy, so that's why I have the accent. So I don't know exactly the day or year this happened, but I'm guessing mid 2014 or early in 2015. I'm a senior in high school and graduating this year. I remember feeling dreadful and not wanting to go to school because somehow I knew something bad was going to happen. After arguing with myself to whether or not go to school and texting my friends, I decided to go to my mom and tell her I won't be going to school because we will only watch movies and eat free food given by the teacher. I finally convinced her and I went to sleep. 2 of my friends also told me they are not going to school. Then I received a message from my dad and friends that came from the school. It says, the school is on lockdown. All students and staff are to remain inside the class. The police are on their way. A student is allegedly threatening all the staffs with a weapon in hand. This was normal for me. The school lockdowns when there's trouble. It happened twice in 5 years. At first, my school wasn't as bad as it is right now. We have student council and we look up to them, and they regulate school rules and are always the ones to stop the fights or anything that will harm the students. That was in 2011 and 2012. When the seniors who were all part of the student council graduated, everything went bad. As in bad, my school was suddenly reported for drug deals, fights inside the school, my school wanting to fight another school, and bomb threats. I can recall events where police were escorting a student a year below mine. I was on year 10. So this wasn't anything that surprising except the last sentence. I read it again and again and make sure I was reading it right, and I was. The next day, my friends who were at the school told me what happened. Apparently, a guy who's 6 feet tall went on a rampage when a teacher told him off for not doing his work and not graduating. The creepy thing, though, was that he's in the same year as me. I often see him in school, and he looks harmless. He broke the school's windows in the 700 block, went to the cooking class and grabbed a kitchen knife as a weapon and threatened everyone that he would kill them. They called the police and made the students go to their closets and remain in class until the police gets to school. Fortunately, they were brave students and knew how to defend themselves and decided to imprison the student into a closet taller than him. A student kicked the knife away from his hand and they pushed him into the closet and locked it until the police arrived. I don't know what happened after that. There were rumors of how he was put in jail, suspended, expelled, and went to another school. It was a good thing I wasn't there. Many times my instinct has saved me from danger, and this is one of those times I won't forget. Tulaki, who's as tall as a bamboo. Let's never be again. For number 3, we have Don't Go Out in the Dark. This was a few years ago, so my memory is a bit foggy, but I do remember some of it. It was winter around 7:30. It was pretty dark. I saw a cat, and since I'm a big cat person, I called it over so I can pet it. That's when I heard heavy breathing. The cat had already ran away, so I just carried on. I was only a few blocks away from my house, and when the breathing stopped, I looked behind me to see a man in his 40s smiling at me. I started running, but he kept at a slow pace. It didn't look like he had a weapon on him, but I wasn't sure. When I got back to my house, I didn't speak of it to anyone. I just went to my room and tried to find something to take my mind off of it. A few days later, I saw him again, but I was at school, so I knew he couldn't do anything to me, and he wandered off before he ended. Luckily, after that, I never saw him again. I have no clue what he wanted or where he was. I now never walk alone after dark. At number 2, we have This Is How Women Disappear. 3 nights ago, I went to pick up cigarettes at a gas station. The walk there was uneventful, just cold, so I was bundled up in a hoodie and sweats. A car pulling into the lot gave me a cheerful honk, so I glanced up and waved. I didn't recognize the driver, but soon he knew me from the church or was a customer for where I worked. I returned the wave. I entered the store and promptly forgot about the tiny interaction. My cashier made small talk with me, joking around about my inability to hold onto a lighter for more than a couple of days. I left the gas station with a smile on my face and an unlit cigarette between my lips. As I fumbled to get a light up, a man called, "Miss, ma'am, could you help me?" A man in his 50s, black, clean shaven, and overweight, waved to me in his silver Ford Focus, worried that he was in trouble. I walked over to his rolled down window. "Can I buy some squares off you, miss?" In his blue collared shirt. He looks like he can be a businessman or a reverend. He explained that he was trying to quit smoking, but it just wasn't his day. He smiles and thanks me when I handed him a few Marlboros to tide him, tell him not to worry about paying. "Do you have any weed?" I was surprised by the question. "It is my thing. Sorry." This conversation now felt awkward. "Where's your car?" he asked when I began turning to leave. My gut told me to lie. "Around the corner." "Let me give you a ride. It's the least I can do." He smiled so big that I can think of Bruce the Shark from Finding Nemo. "No." I briskly left the parking lot, shuddering and trying not to imagine what could happen to a woman who got into his car. I looked back once to see him peel out of the parking lot in the other direction, and made note of all the details I can remember for a police report that would probably sound so unimportant that I practically heard the desk sergeant rolling her eyes. I kept my eyes out for a silver focus, and once on my walk, I glanced over my shoulder to see if the slow driving car rumbling down the brick road belonged to the smiling man. It was just some white junker car, so I saw it and continued walking quickly. I felt increasingly uneasy over my encounter in the parking lot, but I figured that my boyfriend hugging me and ordering a pizza will help me shake this feeling. I eventually look up from the second cigarette that I lit up on my way home and feel like I'm on the home stretch. 3 more houses until I can put a dead-bolted door between me and an unsettling smile. Feeling glad that my journey was almost done, I made one last scan of my neighborhood. My stomach sunk. The white clunker car, which was not the one from the parking lot, was slowly rolling behind me. I considered running down an alley, but decided against it. I walked to my porch and defiantly turned around so I could peer at whoever was following me. The man in the passenger seat eclipsed the driver. I recognized him from earlier. The morbidly obese man was Kevin. 4 years ago, I had been walking home from a friend's house after needing to vent all my pregnancy woes. Being 6 months pregnant into a 9-month long relationship was taking a toll on me. Just a block away from where the gas station would later be built, a man pulling out of the parking lot asked me for directions. I came up to his window and tried the best I could to give him directions to a hotel. He was white, in his 50s, bald, and large enough to have many chins. He introduced himself as Kevin, shaking my hand. Then he asked if I wanted to hang out with him. Nope! I turned to walk away, but he grabbed my hand and started to open his door. I pushed his hand off and ran. I didn't stop running until I was pounding on the door, sobbing. I later went to the hospital after I started bleeding, afraid I was going to lose the baby. Now, 4 years after the incident, after just meeting the smiling man, Kevin was driving in front of my house. He grinned and waved, his chin jiggling. I didn't wave back. And number one, we have strangely helpful man. So this happened while I was on my way home from a night out. I had missed the last two and just jumped on the first night bus I recognized. Yes, I had a few drinks and at this point I was making my way home purely on muscle memory. I recognized the night buses. I vaguely knew where I was and I was texting my boyfriend so I thought I wasn't that completely drunk. I got off when the bus terminated and started planning my next route. At this point, a guy walked up to me, handing me a leaflet about God and His fury, and asked me where I was going. Being slightly smashed, I told him my location, and he said he knew what bus I needed, but he could drop me off closer to home. I'm 26 years old, and I'm sorry to say, I agreed. We got into his car. I stupidly got in, and he began driving. Now I started falling asleep. The car was so warm, and I was so tired. I could vaguely hear this guy talking to me, and he was again preaching about Jesus. I wasn't really paying any attention until he started repeating I should give my body to God to cleanse my sins or some nonsense. He was going about how good my body was and how easily I'd be forgiven. I'm an idiot. I'm 5'1", 7 stones, 10 pounds, and I love a high-heeled boots. Basically, I'm a perfect target. It was at this point I started waking up and paying attention. We stopped at a traffic light, and thank God the car wasn't locked, so I jumped out and staggered into the nearest chicken shop. He was yelling after me, and I told the chicken guys what had happened. After they rightly told me how stupid I was, one walked me to the nearest cab, and I got home safely. I told my boyfriend the next morning, and I still don't think he's quite forgiven me. I haven't been out late since that helpful God guy. My God, let's not meet.